Ladies and gentlemen, the camera angle is different. My walls got wider. I feel like John Brice's are closing in on him. He had like an insurmountable lead early in the season in the picks. We're talking about week 11 recap. Brice, I don't know, week 3, week 4, we had let him stroll right on out. He was lengths ahead. 7, 8 games, I don't know, 12 games, 14, whatever it was. The lead has shrunk to 1.
Wow, I didn't know that.
1.
I knew it was close.
He's talking about the view wasn't changing, but now there's something in the periphery, and he's like, what's going on there? Oh, and there's Doug over here, too. Doug's only 3 back. Whoo, it's getting tight.
Speaking of views, boys, I'm looking out the window here in South Bend where we have 6 inches of snow on the ground. It is completely white here in the Bend. Absolutely. Here you go. I'm gonna do it. There you go.
Very nice. Very nice.
Oh, no, thank you.
Yeah, a little early. It's nice, but it's early.
That was week 11 college football. I love it. So I had several buddies travel up to Arkansas, to Fayetteville for LSU Arkansas, and there were pictures coming back early yesterday morning. Like, there's this white stuff on the ground. How does one deal with that?
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys saw how the Arkansas grounds crew tried to by spraying it with the sprinklers. No.
And then they scraped the field.
Yeah, which was nice.
Yeah, and we might as well start with that game. So
let's start right there. LSU played, okay, so Barry Odom did a great job scheming them up. And Matt House's defense, we've been talking about this all year long. I've talked about number 40, Harold Perkins Jr. The kid's just lightning in a bottle. And I think LSU, I said this regarding their offense early on, they didn't really understand what they had. It took them a little while to figure it out. Same thing with 40. I think they were playing 40 as a traditional linebacker for, several weeks. And once they said, let's put this kid at a rush edge and just let him go get the quarterback, he's been on fire and unstoppable largely. I think technically 4 sacks changed the game. Every time LSU needed to stop on defense, he hit the quarterback. It was fascinating to watch. When he tracked down the original quarterback who was playing for Arkansas, the announcer was like, that quarterback's the fastest kid on Arkansas's team, and 40 just tracked him down. That was fantastic. Good fun stuff.
Yeah,
anyway,
so I know we're going to kick this team when they're down later on, but why not start early? A&M signed the number 1 recruiting class of all time in 2022. The one kid they did not get that they really wanted was Harold Perkins, and he's the best kid in that class. He looks like the best player in the 2022 class, and I wouldn't argue against you if you wanted to argue that he's the best player in college football, at least over the last 2 weeks. I mean, he looks I'm not going to take credit for this analogy, but he looks like the college version of Micah Parsons. Just absolute. The way he plays with his hair on fire combined with his immense physical gifts just makes you love watching that dude.
Yeah, to me, the big takeaway I took out of the Arkansas LSU game was just how well both defenses played, to be honest with you. And it took a Herculean effort from the Arkansas defense to give the Hogs a chance because they obviously didn't have KJ Jefferson and obviously were outmanned and outgunned in a lot of spots. But they had their chances even when LSU went up 13-3. Arkansas didn't fold. That's a team that's struggling through some injuries right now and in a losing skid, but they're still playing really, really hard. So that's a quality. When we talked about it on the podcast Thursday, I said if I knew the health of KJ Jefferson for sure, I would lean toward picking the Hogs because, Zach, I think you were saying the Vegas line was way too close or something like that.
It was LSU -3.
There you go. So
Matt House.
So the 4th and 2, Sam Pittman went for a 4th and 2 at midfield, midway through the third quarter. You're trailing 6-3. You made LSU go 3 and out in the previous possession. I thought that was a poor decision by Sam Pittman, and LSU went down on a short field and scored. I know Greg McElroy did a good job pointing out the inexperience of Malik Hornsby when he was rolling to the right, everything was going to the right, and then he tried to reverse field and slipped. He had nothing to the left. He should have gone to the right, but Sam Pittman should have punted that football. Pin him deep, keep playing defense. It's 6-3. You don't need to go for that. And then also, the SEC is the SEC for a lot of reasons. They have the best programs. They have the best players. It just means more. But the SEC consistently protects its favorite teams, and there is no way you will ever convince me that LSU got to the 22-yard line on that 3rd and 4, where it was 2 minutes left. Pittman, they reviewed it. I don't see him ever getting to the 22-yard line. That was a 4th down. They should have punted. When LSU got that first down, it was game over. The SEC protects its favorite, its bell cows.
All I'll say is that I think officiating is a really thankless job, but with the money now on the line at the collegiate level and continuing to blossom, they really need to have professional officials, universal officials in college football. It shouldn't be one league does their games and another league does theirs. There should be a national collegiate officials association.
I know they talked about that at the NFL level. Did they ever decide to do that? Because
Not sure.
Yeah, but that was an egregious call, and Sam Pittman was right to be angry about that one.
Well, to your point about teams being protected, and I guess we can use this as a segue into this contest. There was a very similar one in the Ole Miss Alabama game where Ole Miss was awarded a first down, and it just wasn't a first down. He was tackled. The receiver was tackled what appeared to be a full half yard to a yard short, and they were allowed to run tempo and keep going. And then the broadcast crew said that the officials told them upstairs that they reviewed the spot and confirmed a first down. And the guys were incredulous. And so that's a call that would have thereby gone against Alabama rather than for Alabama. But and it was at a key spot in the game early on when Alabama was really struggling to get its footing. We talked about the coaching job of Lane Kiffin and company on Thursday on the podcast. I thought it shined again yesterday because that's just overall not a very complete Ole Miss football team. They've got Quinshon Judkins, who's really good, and Dart did some stuff with his legs yesterday, but no consistency in the pass game, and obviously not the same personnel as Bama, but they took the Tide down to the wire before Alabama got the win it had to have.
So for those who don't know, a little segue about Football Scoop. It's 10 a.m. Central Time. We're recording this, and it's a Sunday after D2 and D3 seasons are ending. And I keep looking at my phone because I keep getting different texts. There's a lot going on in the D2, D3 world. The regular season's come to an end. Those who aren't making the playoffs, there's a reason they're not making the playoffs. And it's a tough day for a lot of those staffs. We'll have more on that later on in the day. Anyway, let's jump into some games, guys. We talked LSU, Alabama. We talked LSU, Arkansas. We talked Alabama, Ole Miss. Let's go through some of the bigger games, get some quick reactions. Texas, TCU. Texas came back at the end. TCU, they won the game. And hats off to those guys. Great job, 10-0 for Sonny Dykes.
Yeah, I mean, it starts up front with how TCU just manhandled the Texas running game. I didn't think they could do that, and I certainly don't think Texas thought they would get manhandled in the run game. I mean, that really forced Texas to play left-handed, and my gosh, the pass game has regressed. I'm about ready to bench Xavier Worthy. The unforgivable thing to me is that Jordan Whittington is the most explosive player in a Texas uniform. I don't care who you are, and it took them the third, fourth quarter to really force him the ball, and once they did that, they started moving the ball. So really an F- offensive game from the Texas staff, but an A+ defensive game. I mean, they gave up 3 points. Texas had the ball, a first and goal to 2, first and goal to 5, scored 0 points or scored 3 points in those situations. If you're going to win a championship in college football, you got to go on the road. You got to win a game when your offense doesn't have its best stuff. And TCU did that and, outscored the Texas offense 17-3. So hats off to them. They clinched a Big 12 championship berth. Looks like they're going to play K-State, and they're rightfully got their eyes on much more than just a Big 12 title at this point.
Yeah, just a dominant defensive performance that stunned me. I mean, just flat out shocked me how much they bottled up Texas, because you guys know I'd been saying for a week I really believed Texas would win that game. Well, I didn't think Texas would only have the ball for 22 and a half minutes of possession. So TCU had the ball 15 minutes longer TCU held Texas below 200 yards of total offense and forced them into 1 for 13 on third down conversions, and also allowed the Horns only to convert 1 for 4 on fourth down. So to your point, Zach, it was a 17-10 game, and I was loving watching it when the drama got high late, but it was a game that TCU thoroughly controlled pretty much wire to wire.
Yeah, and I mean, TCU has lived on explosive plays, especially explosive plays in the run game. And so, the Texas defense played outstanding, A-plus material for all but 2 plays. But those 2 plays were, a misalignment in the run game and a coverage bust, and that's 14 points, and 106 yards on 2 plays, and that's your ball game right there. So
TCU,
go ahead.
Those last, 3 minutes when TCU had to run out the clock, they just ran the clock. They just ran right up the middle and said, stop us, and Texas couldn't stop them. I think he went 9 yards, first down, 10 yards, first down, something like that. It was just –
to John's point, I mean, at that point, the Texas defense had been on the field the entire game. They were just spent at that point.
There was a discussion, I believe, on Thursday's podcast, maybe the one before that, where you guys were trying to tell me that DKR was hot and DKR was lit and all that stuff. I didn't see much of the first half of this game, but in the third quarter I'm watching, and they did a crowd shot. It was like 3/4 full. What was that about? I
think that's all on the home team's performance. Like, if Texas had come out and taken an early lead, I think the crowd was there and ready to be a factor in that game. But the offense just gave them nothing to cheer for. It was just abysmal. It was Sean Watson, Charlie Strong material right there from the offense.
Y'all were trying to tell me that place had all the energy and all the juice. No,
it was there. You didn't see the part where it was there. It was there. I mean,
if you're not there in the second half against a team that's 9-0, you're not there. I'm sorry.
At some point, the guys in the jerseys have to hold up their end of the bargain.
Yeah, you're saying what you saw in the third quarter, and there should have been better atmosphere at that point in time. But it was beyond capacity. It was packed. It was seating capacity officially is around 100,000. They were 4,000 over capacity.
Did you see the crowd shot? There was no one there.
They're still coming back from the concession stands at that point.
No, I got reports from the crowds. Like the crowd was ready to be a factor, and the guys in the headsets and the helmets didn't, at least on offense, didn't do their part, didn't hold up their end of the bargain.
All right. I doubt many people in the country saw this, but I don't know if you guys saw the end of Auburn A&M. I don't know if you guys saw the crowd after while they were interviewing Cadillac. That was what the SEC crowds are about. Texas got a long way to come before they get into the conference, I guess.
Well, you're talking about a win versus a loss.
You're talking about a win against Texas A&M, which barely even counts. But yeah, I mean,
you're talking about a win versus the third
a loss against the number 4 team in the country who was undefeated, and you can't get hyped for that in the second half.
You can't say a win
versus a loss.
Yeah, you can't say a win against A&M barely counts. I promise you that loss counts for the Aggies about $1 million per each time Jimbo loses another game, and we won't even go into all the NIL components factored into the cost of these losses.
All right, moving right along. Georgia took care of business, Mississippi State. Anything needs to be said there?
I thought Zach Barnett had a good plan early, and Mississippi State frustrated the Georgia offense for a little bit. But you saw, to me, these were very closely paralleled games. Georgia, Mississippi State, Tennessee, Missouri. Missouri was able to do some things defensively as well in the first half of that game and had Tennessee fans nervous. It was 28-24 moments into the third quarter when Tennessee finally uncorked its offense and really got rolling. It was very similarly like 21-12 in that Georgia-Mississippi State game. And then the Georgia Bulldogs ran away with things. So 2 similar games where you think, are these 2 teams that have been at the top of the SEC all season, are they vulnerable after playing one another last week? And then both steadied themselves and took off.
I don't know if you guys got to see much of Washington, Oregon. That was a serious football game. Fun environment. Place was hopping. Came down to the very end. And I could be wrong with this. I think we all thought Oregon was going to win as at home night. Autzen. Washington got them.
Yeah, no, I thought Oregon was going to win and win comfortably. Washington, I think Zach might have had this stat. Somebody else had this stat. Washington was like 1-15 or something in its last
14-2, I believe it was.
Yeah. So Washington, very, very house of horrors for them at Autzen Stadium. And I think Oregon was favored by 2+ touchdowns. I really thought Oregon would continue to steamroll because this was a Washington team that has had some solid performances, but they've typically been at home, not away from home. And it was an Oregon team playing extremely well and with tons to play for. And, guys, in a weekend that I don't think any of us expected it, suddenly the Pac-12 is down to having one team with an outside shot of being in the playoffs. If they win out, they'll be there. But UCLA fumbles one away against Arizona. Oregon shocked at home by Washington, and only USC remains standing for that conference.
So I know we talked about this Thursday, and I was agreeing with you that, if SC wins out, that means they got a nice win over Notre Dame, UCLA. They got all these nice wins coming together. And you say if they win out, they're going to be in. But I'll throw you a crazy scenario, and I'm not this scenario guy, right? But so you're going to have Ohio State or Michigan, right? One of them's going to be in. You're going to have TCU if they win out. So that's 2 undefeateds, right? So what happens if LSU beats Georgia? No, nobody expects that, but what happens if LSU beats Georgia?
If LSU beats Georgia, Georgia's still going for sure. They would be 12-1. They've been the wire-to-wire number 1 team. We've already seen it happen before with that conference, and specifically with Georgia. And then I think Georgia would be in. And in that scenario, if USC is 12-1 and Pac-12 champion, I think USC would be in. I think that would be your 4 teams.
So what's working against LSU is, 8 years of precedent at this point. No 2-loss team has ever made it, and no team that's been blown out has ever made it. And LSU got blown out by Tennessee on its home field. That's going to be 2 things working against them that all the teams they're competing against don't have. Now, having said that, you beat Alabama and you hypothetically beat Georgia. That's a different argument than any of the 2-loss teams we've seen before.
Right. That's all. Yeah.
No, look, I'm not saying it's impossible for LSU to make the playoffs, but under the scenario you just described, I would not see it. I still think Georgia would get in based on the metrics of the entire season and not that one game. I think the committee has shown that one game isn't defining. Just frankly, a year ago when Georgia lost that game to Alabama and still went into the playoffs. Now, what happens if TCU loses along the way and is a 12-1 Big 12 champion instead of 13-0? Then and then in your scenario, if LSU beats Georgia, that could leave cracked the door for LSU to make the playoff, or even again Tennessee sitting there at 11-1 to potentially make the playoffs. Although I think at that point in time, Tennessee would be really dinged by having not only not won its conference, but not even its division.
Yeah. All right, good fun. Let's bring it back to the games. Sorry. Tulane had a huge opportunity in front of them. Uptown, Yeoman, UCF coming to town, and they just didn't get it done. It was close, but they just didn't get it done. UCF had an answer. Every time Tulane got close, UCF strode out. Tulane punched back, and UCF went back up 2 touchdowns, and Tulane just couldn't get there.
Yeah, it was close in the final score, but again, it was one of those contests where UCF controlled it wire to wire. I mean, they really did. Kudos to Gus Malzahn and company. They had, again, we've referenced it. They had that terrible loss a few weeks ago at East Carolina, and not because East Carolina is a bad team is it a terrible loss. It's just the way that the UCF lumbered through that game that made it a terrible loss. But now they're sitting here 8-2. They controlled that game yesterday on the road. A week before, they had controlled more or less the game at Memphis, and here we are.
I mean, if UCF wins their next 2, they're hosting the AAC championship game. And the bounce house, talk about environments. The bounce house, can be a great environment when the home team gives it a reason to. So at this point, I'm taking Gus Malzahn's team's got to be the favorite to win that conference. So great season potentially for them so far. And Tulane, they lost that game in warmups. The blue helmets, blue pants, green jerseys, not a good look. Not their best.
They do have great stuff. I agree. That wasn't the hitter. All right. People get upset if I don't mention Ohio State, Michigan. Ohio State and Michigan both took care of their games. Moving on.
Okay, so hold on that point. I'm glad you brought that up. There's no reason to discuss these actual games, but moving forward, Fox, CBS, and NBC are basing their entire college football strategy basically around the Big Ten. What is there? Like the SEC yesterday gave you a great Alabama Ole Miss game, a great LSU Arkansas game. Georgia and Mississippi State was a blowout, a mismatch, but it was compelling for moments. Missouri, Tennessee was compelling for a little bit. Auburn, A&M was great theater, if nothing else.
It was good theater, absolutely.
You got, and then in the Big Ten, your biggest games, the big noon game is Ohio State just pummeling Indiana.
You didn't even mention Vanderbilt winning for the first time since any of us have been alive. I'm kidding.
Okay, yeah. So the big noon game is Ohio State, blah, Indiana, maybe the worst team in the conference, blowout city. Michigan, Nebraska, total mismatch, not compelling. What was the third best game? Purdue, Iowa. That's going to be your NBC night game. Purdue, Iowa. I mean, I know the Big Ten games get big numbers, but that's because they have big demographics. Like the SEC gives you great football week in, week out. That's why the SEC does great numbers. So, I mean, ultimately it's not my problem. I didn't spend this money, but I just don't see a whole lot of compelling football out of the Big Ten.
Purdue, Illinois, and Purdue gets the upset win on the road, and that's a natural segue because now, to your points, Zach, the Big Ten West is abysmal, and it's chaos and an abysmal division right now because of that win for Purdue. The Boilermakers are right there in the mix to go to Indianapolis and be the Big Ten West representative against
Big Ten West sacrificial lamb.
I was going to say, or Big Ten West offering, for either Michigan or Ohio State.
So, rest of country thinks of the Big Ten as Ohio State and Michigan, and the West, or whatever they call it now, leaders, champions, whatever. I'm joking. The West, they got nothing. That's what the rest of the country thinks. They have nothing. So Ohio State and Michigan will play, and I'll watch that game. So that game's going to do great numbers. That's what rest of country thinks. That team's going to win, and you're like, that team's really good, or is the other team not that good? I don't know. And then every now and then the West champion beats Ohio State or Michigan, and then everybody goes, Big Ten is just trash. That's what the rest of the country thinks. That just is.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the saying used to be, big 2, little 8. Now it's become, big 2, little 12, and maybe USC and UCLA can change that. But I mean, when Penn State, gets, can't beat either one of those teams, it's like what you said, Scott. I'll watch Michigan, Ohio State, but why would I need to tune into any other Big Ten game?
I tell you what, how far, as we continue this Big Ten discussion, how far has Tom Allen's star fallen at Indiana? I mean, they were really magical and won all the close games they needed to in 2020, and had a breakthrough campaign that ended with in the postseason. And then the last 2 years, they've just been disaster. And they were overmatched from the outset yesterday and run out of that stadium. They've made significant changes at offensive coordinator multiple times in recent years, and here they are. Things are bad in Bloomington.
How much of that coincides with Kane Womack leaving to become head coach of South Alabama?
I think, you've lost Kane Womack, and then before that, you'd lost Kalen DeBoer, and I don't think that the hires replacing those guys, for whatever reason, haven't been up to snuff or have not worked out.
Let me run a couple more games by you guys. The Fighting Jed Fishes came back and got a win at UCLA late.
I mean, great job. That's been such an improved program from where they are, and certainly what he took over was just a dead Arizona program, and he's breathed life into them. So it's nice to see them have some substantive proof of that, even if it's going to hurt the conference as a whole. Great win for Arizona.
And they get their final 2 games at home against Wazoo and Arizona State. Now, that Wazoo game is going to be a tough ask, but obviously if you can go on the road and beat UCLA, you feel like you can hold your own at home against Wazoo. But if they get the win against Wazoo and then host Arizona State in that rivalry game, if they sweep their last 2, they're going to a bowl. They'll be 6-6. It would be a phenomenal first-year measure for Jed Fish and company. Year two. Very much the same as, excuse me, first year at UConn and what's happening there for Jim Mora. And that was a huge win for the Huskies yesterday to take out Liberty.
Huge win. I mean, that was fantastic. I mean, Jim Mora just the joke of the day was, does Randy Edsall get a bonus for this win? Oh my gosh. Incredible. Woo! Congratulations, Jim Mora. Nice work.
Congratulations to Doug for that.
North Carolina goes to Wake. Man, I think we all thought it was going to be back and forth a little bit. I know I picked Carolina because I'm on Drake May because I've been riding him since week 1. Let's go, baby.
At this point, yeah, it's going to be North Carolina and Clemson for the ACC championship game. At this point, it looked like at the season end with the ACC Coastal was kind of the Big Ten West, and then now they were going to offer up the sacrificial lamb to Clemson. At this point, Clemson might. I know they got a win over Louisville, but I might take North Carolina to win that game over Clemson straight up. They're going to have the better quarterback for sure.
Yeah, I'm certainly leaning that way right now. Yesterday was big for me to see out of North Carolina because I thought that Wake would fix a lot more of its issues than it did, and so North Carolina is playing incredibly well, and I don't think they can do enough if they were to win out and finish 12-1 and have a 2-touchdown loss at home to Notre Dame. I don't think they could do enough to enter that conversation about the CFP, but it's going to be compelling if they go down and finish out 12-1.
Yeah, in 2015, North Carolina went to the ACC championship game against Clemson and were 11-1, and even then they were like 15th. Like, I'm not saying they're going to be that low, but it was the situation where even if they win this game, they're not getting in. But even still, great job by Mac Brown and his staff. He changed out Jay Bateman, defensive coordinator, for Gene Chizik. That hire looked horrible after week 1, but they've played winning football since then. UNC was the most underachieving team in 2021, and they've been major overachievers this year.
Yeah, and Phil Longo, man, my goodness, that guy, he needs to be a head coach.
We talk about it every year, and we say NC State's going to NC State.
Mm-hmm.
And they just lost to Boston College, who is not good at all.
No.
Yeah.
Every year.
Mm-hmm. It's in the program DNA.
It is.
It's in the fibers of the uniforms.
Here's a couple of things that will both explain how BC won and blow your mind. First of all, NC State had 4 turnovers. That's obviously not winning football. You can't have 4 turnovers against a team that you're perceived to be so superior to. And then Boston College won this game, guys, with a game total -1 net rushing yard. -1. Boston College won the game with -1 rushing yard.
They might be the only team in FBS to do that this season. I would be surprised if they weren't.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, yeah, man.
If you're consuming this podcast audio only, you're missing some of the best stuff. Is Scott's faces. That says more than any of our words ever do.
I gotta tell you guys, I feel like Dave Doran's at a place with that fan base where Dave kind of feels like he's ready for a change. The fan base feels like they're ready for a change, but they're kind of contractually obligated to each other. And then something like this happens, and that hurts his opportunity to go somewhere else.
Purgatory.
Yeah, seriously, that's where NC State is. Notre Dame strode out early. Navy, get back to play.
Yeah, you want to talk about bad offensive second halves or whatever. Yeah, Notre Dame's up 35-13 in complete control of the game, looking like it has a 4th down stop on the first possession of the second half. Navy, shockingly, on 4th and 2, calls a pass play. Bit of a ticky-tack holding call on the safety that negates the stop that would have given Notre Dame a very short field. Instead, Navy gets that, gets that drive sustained. They end up going on like a 15-play, 10-minute drive, and it's 35-20 at that point. And everything just sort of started to shift, guys. I have this stat for you. Notre Dame gave up 19 second-half points to Navy. Notre Dame's offense had 20 second-half snaps.
Ooh.
Wow.
Yeah, and 12 net yards of offense. Now, to Notre Dame's credit, having 12 net yards of offense, including just 9 net yards in the fourth quarter, Notre Dame nonetheless held the ball for 9 minutes in the fourth quarter with 1 first down and 9 yards of offense.
All right, fast forward me to Purdue, Illinois. I think that game's tied up heading to the fourth quarter at Illinois. Burtz did not get it done.
Nope. Bad loss.
And then they got to go to Michigan either this week or next. So that if you bake in a loss there already, this is a game they had to win, and they fumbled their Big Ten West opportunity away. They could still win it. It's like a 4-way tie. They're 4-3. Who knows what happens from there? But it would have been theirs to lose if they'd beaten Purdue, but they had to beat Purdue to do that.
So we talked about Florida State going to Syracuse. I think we all thought Florida State was going to win that game pretty easily. They did. Syracuse, again, we talked about this. They went out 6-0. They might finish 6-6.
Yeah. I mean, I went on a radio show in preseason and was asked, who's the first Power 5 head coach fired? And I was like, there's the obvious candidates. I'm not going to say them, but, Dino Babers is the guy I've got my eye on. And then he started 6-0, and I was like, man, I look stupid. And I don't look so stupid anymore.
Things like that happen. All right. Last top 25 game I want to talk about real fast. I didn't get to see the end. I was watching some other game. They cut in. And they said, you didn't really think Kentucky was going to lose to Vanderbilt, did you? Here's Rodriguez breaking a 70-yard touchdown run. Kentucky's reclaimed the lead. We're late in the fourth. Kentucky's trying to hold on. They didn't hold on. How did Vanderbilt get the win?
Vanderbilt marched down the field. Kentucky scores. First of all, Vanderbilt takes a late 17-15 lead. And with maybe less than 5 minutes to go, and you think, okay, Kentucky's in real trouble now because of this. And then on its first or second snap from scrimmage after the ensuing kickoff, C-Rod breaks one 72 yards to the house, and you're like, oh, Vanderbilt gonna Vanderbilt. But no, they get the ball back, and they start driving, and then Kentucky commits a disastrous penalty that wipes off a turnover that would have ended the game. And then Vanderbilt, Mike Wright, helps get them set up for first and goal, and Vanderbilt just scores. And then even still, Kentucky had one last gasp chance, and Will Levis threw a pick. Color me not shocked. Not shocked. Will Levis now in 21 games as Kentucky's starting quarterback has 22 interceptions and 3 or 4 lost fumbles. He averages more than 1 turnover per game. That's why I'm incredulous when I continue to hear this guy talked about as potentially the first quarterback taken or a lock top 10 pick. I'm befuddled by that, because if you're a top 10 NFL quarterback, you make the people around you better. I have not seen Will Levis make the people around him better. And Kentucky's offensive line is terrible. You've got the backdrop to this season of Stoops presumably talking smack about Shane Beamer changing culture and wearing stupid sunglasses and backward hats. You've got the very public spat between Calipari and Stoops. And this season has just been very quickly one to forget for the Wildcats.
Yeah.
I skipped a big one. We've Kentucky. I think we all know where Kentucky is. Vanderbilt, congratulations. K-State just put it all over Baylor. Zach, give me quick thoughts on that one.
Blake Shapen had a rough night. I mean, everyone at Baylor had a rough night, and that's got to be really disappointing for Baylor. You had an opportunity to play your way into the Big 12 championship, and I thought, Scott, you were laughing at me Thursday about how they, if they win these next 4, and then they went out and just got pummeled. And now K-State, getting off the mat after that home loss. Now it looks like they're probably going to be in the Big 12 championship game. At this point, it would be, if they went out, they're in that number 2 spot. So, I mean, that's such a big boy grown up win by K-State. That if they're the number 2 team, they deserve to be there.
All right, we're 35 minutes in. Some quick thoughts. Oklahoma went to West Virginia, and they lost.
Big win for West Virginia, and we all know it. I mean, that was one that staff had to have. And so a significant win. I don't know anybody who doesn't like Neil Brown, so happy for Neil Brown and company. to see them get that win. Because
the backup quarterback Green gave them a ton of spark with his legs in the run game that dimension JT Daniels does not offer that they needed. And then I saw it pointed out on Twitter that the Jeff Lebby offense can get you 30 yards when you don't need it, but it can't get you 3 yards when you do need it. And I think that sums it up. Like Oklahoma was just the worst team on the field against what I would have told you going into the game was the worst team in the Big 12.
Mel Tucker's got his team back to 5-5 after a big win over Rutgers. That's all I'm going to say on that one. Duke, 7th win on the year. Being Virginia Tech, who's not playing great, but congratulations to Duke. They just beat Virginia Tech, in Durham. That's great.
Yeah, I believe the Duke program, or at least the Duke Twitter account, was getting pretty chesty after winning that game. So going on the road to Blacksburg and winning is a big deal for Duke, no matter, even if Virginia Tech's 2-7.
No, this was in Durham, but yeah.
Oh, my bad. Either way.
That's right. All right, so I didn't see anything about this, but I saw a tweet that was shared that said Pitt beat the tar out of Virginia. But the way that it started, first 2 passes, is that right? The first 2 passes by Virginia quarterback were pick sixes. It was 14-0.
Yeah, and it was Brennan Armstrong. What's happened to Brennan Armstrong? A year ago, he was being touted as a potential Heisman candidate. He literally set the record you absolutely don't want to set by having his team down 14-0, 14 seconds into the game. I think it was literally like 14 or 16 seconds into the game. They're down 14-0 because 2 kickoffs for touchbacks, 2 pick sixes. Bingo, bango, bongo. The game's over at that point.
Incredible. Wow. Louisiana Monroe goes on the road, beats Georgia State. Georgia State's 4-6, and I'm concerned for Georgia State in general. Moving right along, Western Kentucky did their thing, wearing those helmets. 45-10 over Rice. Arkansas State gets a win. Butch Jones 3-7. Glad to see them getting a win there. Houston, hard-fought win over Temple.
Face says it all.
Troy is 8-2. Troy played Army. It's never any fun to play Army. Army's just different, right? Troy is 8-2. Congratulations, man. John described this game as an attractive game to watch. Iowa is 14-10 at halftime. No more points scored until the 4th quarter, but Iowa gets a win, 24-10. Congratulations.
Describe how attractive it was, John.
Well, I told you it would be 2 branded programs that we would see well-coached defense and that either team would have a chance to win in the 4th quarter. Spot the lie. You can't do it. You can't spot the lie. There is no lie. Sorry,
I don't think that's how you described it. I think you said this is going to be a 1-possession game at the end, 1-point win type thing. That's okay. Jim Leonard needed to win that game, and Chris McIntosh was cheering fervently for Jim Leonard to win that game, and he did not. And that decision is looking more and more puzzling up there. Scanning around the room, UTSA 51-7 over La Tech. Congratulations. That's awesome. Florida just donkeyed South Carolina. I believe South Carolina's only points might have been on a fake punt, perhaps. Am I wrong on that?
We talked about this Thursday. The Gamecocks are in a world of hurt here coming down the stretch. They had that game yesterday. They host Tennessee next week, and then they close with Clemson. The most winnable game, I said going into it for them, is Clemson. It would be the most meaningful. But can they do it if they've been blown out in back-to-back weeks by Florida and Tennessee? I'm not so sure about that. Not a top 25 game, but one that a specific loyal listener to the podcast texted me and said, you got to give Zach blank about his North Texas pick. Holy smokes. He goes, I believe his exact words were, it's 12 free points. They're 6-point underdogs. I would favor them by 6. He's like, it's 12 free points. This guy so loyally listened, shout out Steve, that he said, give Zach grief about it because he said 12 free points. So there you go. Zach, all the grief.
That's why I don't gamble.
Yeah.
That's exactly why. Hey, real fast. FCS. So we talked about Hatcher's squad. They got another big win over Chattanooga. Congratulations, Hatch 9-1. Sac State is undefeated. They just beat the dog out of Portland State. That's a big win too. What else we got? Yale got Princeton. How about that?
That was a big one. And Princeton had 2 chances to win late, down 24-20. Couldn't move the sticks on one, had a turnover on another one. Big win for Yale. Princeton, I forget who they play next week, but it's for the Ivy League title. I'll make my plea once again. I wish Ivy League teams were in the playoffs, much like I wish the HBCUs could also go to the playoffs, because Deion won again, not pretty, 27-13, I think, against Alabama A&M. Sort of lumbered through, had some injuries they had to battle through. And then Montana and Montana State continue to look just phenomenal. Montana, I think, won 57-0. Montana State, their offensive coordinator, Housewright, remember that name, they hung 77, I believe, yesterday on somebody like Portland State or something. So big time win.
Rich Rod is 8-2 Jack State. Congratulations. Which other one I saw? Holy Cross is 10-0. Man, Chesney is just a ball coach. Man, that's a program. NDSU slugged through Southern Illinois, got a win. Scanning these games right quick. Man, Petrino's team has had a brutally bad season, but they came back and beat Youngstown State. So that's a big win for the program. Missouri State, Bobby Petrino's team, with a win yesterday, now 4-6 in the season. Oof.
Gardner-Webb stayed perfect in the Big South, which means things continue to go the wrong direction at Campbell. And Gardner-Webb was way out in front in that game. I know the final ended up 42-35, somewhat similar to a week ago when Campbell was down really badly against Bryant and then came back and scored like 21 points in the fourth quarter, but couldn't get over the hump. It's tough to see.
John, is Campbell a situation like, I mean, it's not the same thing as Texas A&M, but Texas A&M has the greatest recruiting class of all time, and they're putrid on the field this season for whatever reason. Campbell, the results aren't there. Got a great recruiting class supposedly coming in.
Yeah, and some of those cats are playing, but it's not translating into wins on the field for whatever reason. It's a really disappointing season for Campbell.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's the Week 11 recap. Gentlemen, any other games we want to talk about real fast before we shut it down?
Shout out to Furman, and you already said to Hatcher and Sanford. Furman and Sanford both looking like they can be playoff teams from the SoCon this year.
Speaking of Hatcher and Sanford, Parks Frazier calling the offense for the Indianapolis Colts today. Let's see how that goes. You never know. Thanks for being with us on Football Scoop Podcast. Tell your friends, tell your coaching buddies. We're here a couple days a week. Find us on the Scoop. Talk to everybody soon. Have a great weekend.